Imagine dedicating 10 years of your life to building an empire with the person you love, only for them to look you in the eye and call you obsolete. They replace you, discard you, and try to erase you from the very world you created together. This is a story about a betrayal so deep it could shatter anyone. But it's also about a hidden truth, a single secret so powerful it could bring that entire new life crashing down. Get ready for a story that proves the past never truly stays buried. Amelia and Ethan were the golden couple. They met in a college business class. Their ambition, a perfect match. From a cramped spare bedroom, they launched a digital marketing firm that grew into a powerhouse in the heart of Chicago. They bought a beautiful condo in Lincoln Park, travelled the world, and seemed to have it all. But there was a quiet sadness that lingered beneath the surface of their perfect life. For years they tried to start a family, a dream that remained just out of reach, a silent strain on their otherwise flawless partnership. They had agreed to stop trying and focus on their shared success, but the unspoken disappointment was a ghost that haunted their home. The air in the conference room was thick with the sterile scent of glass cleaner and unspoken tension. Amelia smiled warmly at the two men across the polished table, potential partners for a merger she had personally cultivated for months. "Gentlemen, I've prepared the final documents," she said, her voice confident. "I believe you'll find we've incorporated all your key points." She slid the leather-bound folders across the table. One of the men, a Mr. Harrison, exchanged a confused glance with his colleague. "Amelia," he began hesitantly, "we're a bit confused. Ethan already informed us this morning. The deal is off." The words hit Amelia like a physical blow. She felt the blood drain from her face. She turned to her husband, Ethan, who had been staring out the window, completely detached. "Ethan, what is he talking about?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, the professional mask she wore beginning to crack under the weight of public humiliation. Ethan finally turned his gaze from the Chicago skyline, but he wouldn't look at her. His eyes were cold, distant. "It's exactly as he said, Amelia. I reviewed the final terms. The deal isn't favourable for us long term. I made an executive decision." The corporate jargon was a shield, a pathetic attempt to hide the raw betrayal. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, we don't want to get in the middle of a domestic issue. We were under the impression you two were on the same page." He and his partner began gathering their things. "Our apologies, Amelia," Harrison said, offering a sympathetic look. "Our advice? Get your house in order before you approach partners. It reflects poorly on the brand." They left, and the heavy oak door clicked shut, leaving Amelia and Ethan in a silence that was louder and more damning than any argument could ever be. The hum of the HVAC system was the only sound in the room, amplifying the cavernous void that had just opened between them. The elevator ride down to the parking garage was suffocating. Neither of them spoke. Amelia stared at her reflection in the polished steel doors, seeing a stranger with wide, wounded eyes. The woman who had walked in that morning, a confident CEO, ready to close the biggest deal of her career, was gone. When they finally got home to their Lincoln Park condo, the silence broke. "What was that, Ethan?" she demanded, her voice shaking with a fury she could no longer contain. "You humiliated me. You sabotaged a deal I worked on for a year. Behind my back." He tossed his keys onto the marble countertop with a clatter. "I did what was best for the company," he said, his tone flat and dismissive. "Your emotional attachment to the project was clouding your judgment." "My emotional attachment," she scoffed, incredulous. "We built this company together, on trust. What happened to that trust, Ethan? What has happened to us?" He finally looked at her, and the coldness in his eyes was terrifying. "Things change, Amelia. People evolve. I've decided to take the company in a new direction." She felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. This wasn't about a business deal. This was about something much deeper, much more personal. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. He let out a long, weary sigh, as if she were a burden he was finally ready to set down. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I've met someone else. Her name is Chloe." The name hung in the air, alien and sharp. And a few months ago, she gave me a son. The world tilted on its axis. A son, the one thing she could never give him. The ghost that haunted their home suddenly had a name and a face, and it had finally come to claim its place. Amelia felt her knees go weak, and she gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. "You're leaving me," she stated, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. It wasn't a question. He had the audacity to look almost relieved. "I hoped you'd be mature about this. We're adults. These things happen." "These things happen," she repeated, her voice rising with hysteria. "You have a secret family, Ethan. You lie to my face and humiliate me in front of business partners. How could you?" He flinched at her tone. "Don't make a scene, it's unbecoming." He then delivered the final, crushing blow. "Look, Amelia, you're a great businesswoman, but our time is over. Frankly, you're becoming obsolete. I've written you off, like old inventory. I need to move forward. Chloe and my son Noah need this home. I need you to pack your things and be gone by tomorrow morning." The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He wasn't just leaving her. He was erasing her, replacing her as if she were nothing more than an outdated piece of software. The hours that followed were a blur of shock and cold, methodical action. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford, while Ethan slept soundly in the guest room, as if he hadn't just detonated their entire life. Amelia moved through their home like a ghost. Every object held a memory, a testament to a life that was now a lie. She opened the safe in their home office, her hand steady. His birthday, their anniversary, the code he never bothered to change. Inside were the original incorporation papers for the firm, deeds to the condo and their lake house in Michigan, car titles. She systematically photographed every single document with her phone, the quiet clicks of the camera shutter sounding like gunshots in the silent apartment. Then she took the originals, tucking them safely into a briefcase. This wasn't just a breakup. It was a hostile takeover, and she would not walk away with nothing. She packed suitcases with a grim efficiency. Clothes, jewellery, personal files. She walked into the living room and looked at the small, priceless antiques she'd collected over the years, a vintage brass coffee grinder, a hand-painted jewellery box. Things Chloe, with her fleeting, modern tastes, would never appreciate. She carefully wrapped them and packed them in a box. Each item was a piece of her identity she was refusing to leave behind. Around 3 a.m., she dragged the heavy suitcases into the hallway, her body aching with exhaustion and grief. He had given her until morning. She decided she didn't need that long. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of watching her leave. She took one last look at the home she had built, the life she had loved, and walked out the door without looking back, the silence of the pre-dawn city swallowing her whole. The next morning, running on pure adrenaline and 3 hours of sleep in a sterile airport hotel, Amelia drove to their office in the Loop. She needed access to her computer, to client files, to evidence of her contribution. But as she approached the glass doors, Frank, the daytime security guard who had greeted her with a warm smile every morning for 5 years, stepped in her way. His face was a mask of professional regret. "I'm sorry, Miss Vance," he said, his eyes avoiding hers. "I have direct orders from Mr. Hayes. You're no longer permitted on the premises." The humiliation burned hotter than any anger. To be barred from her own company like a common trespasser. "Frank, please," she said, her voice low. "You know me. This is my company." He looked genuinely pained. "I know, ma'am, but it's my job. He said he'd call the police if you tried to force your way in. I can't lose this job." She saw the desperation in his eyes and nodded, the fight draining out of her. It was a calculated move by Ethan, designed to isolate her and strip her of her power. She wouldn't give him a public scene. She simply turned and walked away. Sitting in her car, the city's frantic energy, a stark contrast to the stillness in her heart, Amelia scrolled through her contacts. She needed a shark, the best divorce and business litigation attorney in Chicago. A name came up recommended by a colleague months ago for a contract dispute. Liam O'Connell, known for being ruthless, brilliant, and incredibly expensive. She dialed the number before she could second-guess herself. An hour later, she was sitting in a sleek minimalist office in River North across a wide desk from a man with kind, intelligent eyes and a calm demeanour that was instantly reassuring. She told him everything, the words tumbling out in a raw, uncensored flood. The business, the betrayal, the baby, the final cruel dismissal. She expected judgment or pity. Instead, Liam listened intently, his expression unreadable, making notes on a legal pad. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. "He called you obsolete," Liam said, the words hanging in the air. "That wasn't just an insult, Amelia. That was a declaration of war. He's not just trying to divorce you, he's trying to erase you." He laid out the grim reality. The business, despite being built together, was in Ethan's name as the primary stakeholder, a mistake born of love and trust. The condo was co-owned, but forcing a sale could be a long, ugly battle. "He's counting on you to be too broken to fight back," Liam concluded. "He's underestimated you." Amelia felt the first flicker of hope. "I have the original documents, financial records," she said, pushing the briefcase across the desk. "I have money in my own accounts. I'll pay whatever it takes. I just want what's mine." Liam nodded, a small, approving smile on his face. "Good. That's the woman who built half of that company. She's the one we need in this fight." As their meeting concluded, Liam looked at her, his professional demeanour softening. "One more thing, Amelia. Where are you staying?" She hesitated, embarrassed. "A hotel for now. I'll find an apartment this week." He shook his head, pulling a set of keys from his desk drawer. "I have a guest condo a few blocks from here. It's empty. A client paid me with it years ago. Use it. No charge." Amelia was taken aback. "I can't. That's too much." "Think of it as part of the retainer," he said, with a gentle firmness that left no room for argument. "You need a secure, stable place to think and regroup. You can't plan a war from a hotel room. Please take it. It will give you one less thing to worry about." Overwhelmed by the unexpected act of kindness from a stranger, Amelia felt her composure crumble. A single tear escaped and rolled down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. For the first time in 48 hours, she felt like she wasn't completely alone. The apartment was beautiful, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. It was impeccably furnished, in a style that was masculine but comfortable. It was also profoundly empty. After ordering food she had no appetite for, Amelia stood by the window, watching the tour boats glide by on the water below. Each light in the buildings across the river represented a life, a story, a world that was still intact. Her own world had been reduced to a few suitcases and a briefcase full of documents. The kindness of a near stranger was a lifeline, but it also highlighted the depths of her isolation. The silence of the apartment was a stark contrast to the home she had shared with Ethan, a home that was always filled with the low hum of his presence, the sound of his keyboard, the music he played. Now, the only sound was the frantic beating of her own heart. A week later, driven by a foolish, lingering hope that Ethan might have had a change of heart, Amelia returned to their condo. She knew her key wouldn't work, but she had to try. As she expected, it didn't even fit in the lock. He had already changed them. Steeling herself, she rang the doorbell. After a long moment, the door opened a crack. A young woman with bright blonde hair and a carefully curated, effortless look peered out. Chloe. She was wearing one of Amelia's silk robes. The sight was a deliberate, calculated sting. "Can I help you?" Chloe asked, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "I'm here to speak to Ethan," Amelia said, keeping her own voice even and steady. "He's not here," Chloe chirped, making no move to open the door further. "And he doesn't want to see you. I think you should probably just move on." "We have." A baby's cry echoed from inside the apartment, another calculated twist of the knife. Amelia's resolve hardened. "This is still legally my home, Chloe. I have a right to be here." The younger woman's sweet facade dropped instantly. Not for long. Ethan's lawyer says you don't have a leg to stand on. This is my house now, my family's house, and you're not welcome. She started to close the door, but Amelia put her hand out to stop it. Just give him a message for me. Tell him I'll see him in court. Chloe laughed, a short, ugly sound. Good luck with that. He told me all about you. You're just bitter because you're old news. He's with a woman who can give him what he really wants now. The door slammed in Amelia's face, the finality of the sound echoing in the quiet hallway. The last vestiges of the woman who had hoped for reconciliation died in that moment. Now, there was only the woman who wanted justice. The first preliminary court hearing was a sterile, impersonal affair. Amelia sat beside Liam, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Ethan was on the other side of the room with his lawyer, looking confident and unbothered. He refused to even glance in her direction. His lawyer stood and argued that Amelia had willingly stepped back from the company years ago to become a lifestyle partner, and that her claims to half the business were baseless and opportunistic. The lies were so blatant, so audacious, that Amelia felt a wave of nausea. He was painting her as a kept woman, erasing her decade of 18-hour days, of strategy sessions, of sacrifices that had built their empire from the ground up. The judge, a stern-faced woman, set a date for discovery and depositions, her expression impassive. As they left the courtroom, Ethan brushed past her, whispering a single venomous word: pathetic. A few days later, Liam called her with an update, his voice grim. It's worse than we thought, Amelia. We just received their initial document disclosure. According to this, you signed over your controlling shares in the company to Ethan 18 months ago. Amelia's blood ran cold. What? That's impossible. I never signed anything like that. The document has your signature on it, Liam continued. Ethan's filing claims you did it as a gift, in recognition of his leadership. He's also appointed a new co-owner to your former position, a man named Michael Suvorov. Michael? Amelia gasped. That's Ethan's college friend, a failed day trader. What is he doing with my shares? He's a puppet, Liam said flatly. A way for Ethan to legitimize the transfer and shield the assets. We're filing for a forensic handwriting analysis, but I need to be honest with you. If you signed it, even if you were tricked, it's going to be an uphill battle. Amelia's mind raced, trying to recall any unusual documents, any stack of papers he'd asked her to sign in a hurry. The betrayal now had a new, terrifying layer: premeditated fraud. Amelia racked her brain, replaying the last 2 years in her mind. She remembered a time, about 1.5 years ago, when Ethan had come to her with a huge stack of end-of-year tax forms and corporate filings. He had been rushing to get to the airport for a business trip. Honey, can you just sign these for me? It's just the standard annual stuff, he'd said, flipping through the pages, pointing to the signature lines. She had trusted him. She'd signed without reading every single line of legalese, too busy with her own projects. The memory made her feel physically ill. He had been planning this for years. While she was working to build their future, he was meticulously plotting her removal from it. The love she thought they shared had been a lie, a cover for his long and patient deception. He hadn't just left her. He had conspired against her. Weeks turned into a grueling month of legal battles. Liam was a rock, tirelessly fighting for her. But Ethan's tactics were dirty and effective. He was delaying, filing motion after motion to drain her resources and her will to fight. It was during a coffee meeting to discuss strategy that Liam broached another difficult subject. Amelia, he began gently, I need to ask you something. I've been hearing some rumours from mutual acquaintances in the business community. He looked uncomfortable. Ethan is telling people a very specific story about why you two couldn't have children. A cold dread filled her. What kind of story? He's telling people that early in your marriage you had an affair, became pregnant, and had a secret abortion that led to complications. He's claiming that's the reason for your infertility. The cruelty was beyond anything she could have imagined. He was taking their deepest, most private pain and twisting it into a weapon to destroy her reputation. He wasn't just trying to take her money, he was trying to annihilate her character. The lie was so monstrous, so completely fabricated, that for a moment Amelia couldn't even speak. She had been faithful to him their entire lives together. He was her first and only love. He knew the truth. He had been with her through every doctor's appointment, every failed treatment, every heartbreaking conversation. He knew the agony she went through, and he was using it against her. That was the moment something inside her shifted. The grief and the hurt receded, replaced by a cold, diamond-hard clarity. He had crossed a line from which there was no coming back. He wanted to play dirty. He wanted to destroy her. But he had forgotten one crucial detail. He had forgotten about a folder tucked away in a storage unit, a folder containing a truth he thought was long buried. "Liam," she said, her voice steady and clear. All traces of sorrow gone. Cancel the handwriting analysis. Drop the motion to contest the business transfer for now. I have a new strategy. He looked at her, surprised by the sudden change in her demeanour. The defeated woman who had walked into his office a month ago was gone. In her place was a queen ready to make her final move on the chessboard. "I need to meet with Ethan," she said. "In person. Alone." "Amelia, I don't think that's a good idea. He's volatile." "Don't worry," she said, a faint chilling smile on her lips. "I'm not going there to argue. I'm going there to end this. He's built his entire new life on one big lie. I'm just going to show him the truth." The fight for the company, for the condo, it all seemed so small now. This was about reclaiming her own narrative, about exposing him for the fraud he truly was. That evening, Amelia drove to the off-site storage unit where they kept old furniture and files. After a few minutes of searching, she found it, a simple manila folder, labelled with the name of a fertility clinic they had visited 5 years prior. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside were the comprehensive test results, the doctor's notes, the final diagnosis. She had begged the doctor to tell Ethan the infertility was her fault, that the problem was with her. She had seen how fragile his ego was, how deeply he was shaken by the possibility that he was the reason they couldn't have a child. She had sacrificed her own pride, her own emotional well-being to protect his. She had taken the blame, carrying the burden of that supposed failure for years, all to shield him. And this was how he repaid her. She carefully placed the folder in her bag, her heart a block of ice. She called him. He answered with a gruff, annoyed, "What?" "Ethan, we need to meet." "Tomorrow," she said, her voice calm and businesslike. "I have nothing to say to you, Amelia. Talk to my lawyer. This isn't about the lawsuit. This is about your son. Meet me at the cafe by the park, the one where we had our first date. It's important." The mention of their first date was a calculated barb, and the mention of his son was the bait. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Fine," he finally bit out. 10 minutes. That's all you get." He hung up. Amelia closed her eyes, taking a deep, steadying breath. Tomorrow she would not be his victim. She would be his reckoning. The next day she was waiting at a small table outside the cafe when he arrived. He looked tired and stressed, the confident facade from the courtroom replaced by a wary irritation. "All right, I'm here. What's so important?" he said, not even bothering to sit down. She didn't say a word. She simply pushed the manila folder across the table toward him. He looked at it, then at her, suspicion in his eyes. "What is this? More legal garbage?" "No," she said softly. "It's a memory. From 5 years ago." "Open it." Frowning, he flipped open the folder. He began to read, his eyes scanning the medical jargon. She watched as the colour drained from his face. His confident posture slowly crumbled as he read the doctor's unequivocal conclusion, the stark, scientific data. He looked up at her, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. This is fake," he stammered. "The doctor said it was you. You were the one who couldn't—" "No, Ethan," she interrupted, her voice devoid of emotion. "The doctor said what I asked him to say. I lied to protect you, to protect your pride, because I loved you, and I couldn't bear to see you feel like less of a man. She stood up, her purse in her hand. The problem was never me. It was you. You are, and always have been, completely sterile. You can't have children. She let the words sink in, watching his entire world collapse in on itself in the space of a single heartbeat. So the question you should be asking, she continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper, is not why I'm showing you this now. The question you should be asking is, whose son are you raising? She turned and walked away, leaving him frozen at the table, staring at the papers that had just invalidated his entire life. Ethan's spiral was immediate and absolute. He didn't go back to the office. He didn't go home. He went to the first dark, expensive-looking bar he could find. He ordered a double scotch and downed it in one go, the burn in his throat a welcome distraction from the inferno in his mind. Sterile, a word that now defined him, a biological dead end. Every cruel word he had ever said to Amelia, every ounce of blame he had placed on her, replayed in his head like a chorus from hell. She had protected him. She had carried his shame as her own, and he had rewarded her by calling her obsolete and throwing her away. He had built his new identity around being a father, a progenitor of a legacy. But the foundation of that identity was a lie. Noah, his son, the boy he adored. It wasn't possible. Chloe wouldn't, would she? He stumbled home late that night, drunk and filled with a terrifying mix of rage and despair. Chloe met him at the door, her face a mask of annoyance. "Where have you been? And you're drunk. You'll wake up Noah." "My son," Ethan slurred, laughing a bitter, broken laugh. "He's not my son, is he, Chloe?" He threw the folder onto the floor between them. "Is he?" Chloe's face went pale as she saw the clinic's letterhead. She knew exactly what it was. Her confident, smug demeanour vanished, replaced by panic. "Ethan, what are you talking about? You're not making any sense. You're drunk." "I'm not drunk enough to forget what this says," he roared, pointing at the papers. "It says I can't have kids. It says I'm sterile. So I'm asking you one more time, whose baby did you trick me into raising?" Her facade shattered completely. Tears streamed down her face as the ugly truth finally came out. She had been dating someone else when she met Ethan. When she found out she was pregnant, her boyfriend wanted nothing to do with it. She knew how desperate Ethan was for an heir, so she saw her chance. She passed the child off as his, creating the perfect trap. "I did it because I love you," she sobbed. "I knew we could be a family." But Ethan wasn't listening. The words were just noise. He looked at her, this stranger who had manipulated his deepest desire, and he felt nothing but a vast, empty coldness. He had torched his life, betrayed a good woman, and destroyed his own integrity, all for a lie. He had become the very thing he'd accused Amelia of being, a fraud. "Get out," he said, his voice quiet and dead. "Pack your things and get out of my house." "But Ethan, what about Noah? He needs his father," she pleaded. Ethan looked toward the nursery, and his heart, already broken, fractured into a million more pieces. "I am not his father," he whispered, the words tasting like poison. "I will give you money, enough to get you and him set up somewhere else. Then I never want to see either of you again." He walked out of the apartment, leaving her sobbing amidst the wreckage of their fabricated life. He had traded a diamond for a piece of glass, and now he was left with nothing but the shards. A few days later, Amelia was leaving Liam's office after signing the final settlement papers. Ethan had conceded on everything: the business, the condo, the lake house. He didn't fight. He didn't even show up, leaving it all to the lawyers. As she stepped out onto the street, she saw Liam waiting for her by the curb, holding a single perfect white rose. "I thought you might need this today," he said with a warm smile. "A new beginning." She took the rose, its scent clean and fresh. "It was never about the money, you know," she said quietly. "It was about the truth." "I know," he replied. "And you fought for it. You should be proud." For the first time in a long time she was. She felt light, free from the weight of Ethan's betrayal and the life they had built on a foundation of secrets. "So," Liam said, his eyes sparkling with a hope that felt wonderfully new, "now that the war is over, what does Amelia Vance, CEO of her own destiny, do next?" Amelia looked at him, at his kind face and the genuine respect in his eyes, and she smiled. It was a real smile, one that reached her own eyes for the first time in months. She thought about the future, a new business, a new life, a chance to be with someone who saw her not as a partner in a transaction, but as a person to be cherished. "I think," she said, her voice full of a promise she was finally ready to make to herself, "she starts by having dinner with her ridiculously charming and handsome lawyer." He laughed, a happy, unrestrained sound that echoed in the busy Chicago street, and as they walked away together into the light of a new day, Amelia knew she hadn't been written off. She had just written her own, much better, ending. In the end, Ethan's empire, built on a lie, crumbled into dust. He lost his wife, his company, and the son he thought was his legacy, all because he couldn't see the value in the woman who had stood by him all along. The ultimate twist wasn't just that the baby wasn't his, but that the woman he betrayed had sacrificed her own pride to protect him from a truth he couldn't handle. Amelia, free and vindicated, walked away not with bitterness, but with the strength and dignity she had always possessed. She started a new life on her own terms with a man who valued her for exactly who she was. Her story is a powerful reminder that true worth is never obsolete, and a life built on deceit will always, eventually, collapse. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And let us ask you this: have you ever had to find the strength to start over after a deep betrayal?